rolling. Okay, let's go to Steve. And he goes, hey, good afternoon, guys. What do you think of the Chargers draft? I thought they did pretty darn well.
Hey, I did a draft report card on my website, One Man's Opinion column today. You should read the thing when this live stream is over. I give them a letter grade of A. I think they drafted 4 guys who could all be starters on opening day. Now, they'll all be young guys, too. And the question is, how fast do these young guys develop? I think they had a good draft, but then they had a fair amount of high draft picks, and this was a very deep draft. So I gave them an A. I gave the Rams an A.
Well, who are the starters? I mean, Joe Alt and then the McConkey kid will probably start, right?
Yeah, and then the linebacker for Michigan, Colson, is going to be a starter.
Okay.
And then they drafted a defensive tackle from Alabama who had come off a neck injury, had a really good bounce-back season last year. I bet he's going to be in the rotation to be a defensive starter because the Chargers lost some defensive tackles.
Wow, 4 starters. That's pretty good.
Exactly. Now, how good they all hold up being kids remains to be seen. Next question.
Next question. Okay, let's go here to Angel. Angel says, Padres just ran into a hot Phillies and still early. The Padres should be okay once Darvish and Musgrove are back to form.
But we don't know that back to form, whether that's possible. We'll find out whether Darvish gets the ball on Tuesday, gets the ball on Thursday, whether it's a reoccurrence of the neck issue. I asked the question in my Saturday morning sports package on KUSI that they got on the air. Joe Musgrove, do we need to give him an extra day's rest? Does he need more time to recover? He's given up a lot of home runs. Like I said, he's made 7 starts. 4 of the 7 he's gotten blasted. His ERA in those 4 games is 11.75. He's given up a lot of home runs. So I just don't think we can use the phrase back in form for those two. And now we got the Michael King home run derby situation too. Mm-hmm. He's given up 10 home runs in 6 starts, that's pretty significant, on top of giving up a lot of hits and walking a lot of batters.
Remember Musgrove thought that he could come back at the end of last year? Mm-hmm. And he says, maybe not as a starter, maybe in the bullpen role, but there's just no way. I mean, considering how he's doing now, I mean, something still isn't right. But you know who is pitching well for the Padres is Adrian Morejon. Yep. And he's been very well. So if they have to put, Darvish or Musgrove back on the DL, he could slide right in.
Yeah, I don't know how many innings you get out of him, but his role, he's pitched very well in his role. He spent the offseason realigning his mechanics with his body and his arm slot. And so far, so good. Now, whether that equates to being able to be a starter and do it for 5 or 6 innings rather than be a 2-inning relief guy remains to be seen. But you're correct. This is a different Adrian Morejon right now.
Yeah, looking forward to getting some return on investment there. Let's go to comment. He says, Winnipeg Jet fans are sad, Hacksaw. Give us some hope.
Well, I'm disappointed they haven't been able to score, because they flourished at the end of the season. A lot of the role players that they traded for were pot and goals, and it's just kind of all disappeared. But let's understand, Colorado is deep. Colorado's got firepower. Colorado's got great goaltending. Winning in Denver is really hard. So, yeah, if they're going to be one and done, I'm going to be disappointed because the way they finished up the season, they have 50 wins, I think. That was pretty impressive. But, boy, their goal scorers just have kind of disappeared on them in the postseason. They're not the only ones. There's going to be a bunch of people disappointed by probably Wednesday of this week.
Well, the fans there are just so fired up, aren't they?
Oh,
I mean, I just love it. I mean, every time you see them in the arena and it's the whiteout and the fans are outdoors following the team, I mean, putting Winnipeg on the map, right?
Yeah. I would hope fans would sell out that building. There've been issues about the cost of tickets. There've been issues that the fans have not responded more recently in the last year. I mean, this is your franchise. This franchise has a great history to it. So I'd hope Winnipeg Jet fans will just kind of rally back and support the team. And I think that management did a pretty good job finding people who could come in and play for them. But all of a sudden we got to postseason. Postseason is just another level up in terms of intensity. Some of the goal scorers have gone away, and you get guys nicked. And, when you're playing every other night, suddenly if a guy gets hurt, it's really tough. But Winnipeg, support the Jets.
Right on. Okay, let's keep going here. We'll go down the list. Let's go here to, what does that say? Eagle Lion. He says, Seattle hasn't set the world on fire the past 3 years, which is where the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator comes from.
Well, it's a change into the guard. The era of Pete Carroll, and that was fairly successful, is now gone. The quarterback issue has never really ever been solved. They've had all these running backs that have gone in there and have been hurt virtually nonstop. Granted, they do have 3 deep at wide receiver, but you got to have a quarterback who can get the football to them. So, I mean, they gave Geno Smith the extension to stay, and Geno's grown as a quarterback. But is Geno a big difference maker? Is the upper echelon that's going to elevate you? And, the Legion of Doom, they all got old and they all left. The Richard Sherman era, boy, that's a long time in your rearview mirror now. So a lot of work to be done. I guess I'm really surprised that they emotionally reached the end of the road with Pete Carroll, because I just think he was a dynamic leader, and they drafted a lot of players that he wanted that fit his system, and it kind of fell apart at the end.
Do you know much about this offensive coordinator he's talking about? I mean, what kind of an offense? Because the Seattle offense was never very dynamic, was it?
Well, it was back in the day when Russell Wilson had come from Minnesota. It was really good. They did get to the Super Bowl, and they were upper echelon in the NFC. You can have all the X's and O's you want in the world, but if you don't have a good offensive line, and there were chunks of years they did not, and then you had the turnover at quarterback where Geno was not Russell, and then they went through so many running backs. We thought Rashad Penny was going to be a star up there, and he averaged 5 yards a carry. He's the kid from San Diego State. He could not stay on the field. He was hurt all the time and in a wide variety of injuries in game. It wasn't that he was out of shape. He calf, broken wrist, things like that. So they've just not had all the components. They got the wide receivers who've been able to stay on the field, but everything else around them has been a turnover. And then the Legion of Doom got old, and you got to rebuild all that almost all at once. It's a real tough haul.
I wonder who called the play in that Seattle, New England Super Bowl right there on the goal line, that pass. That was just a disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Well, Pete Carroll put it on me, but I don't know.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Sam Crow. He says, Jerry thinks Zeke will help the running back problem.
Well, he's not the back that he was before. I mean, he went to New England, and I thought the fact that they run the football a lot with the Patriots, I thought Belichick will squeeze the last ounce of energy out of him. Never, ever happened. He actually never, ever won the starting job. I don't know. He's coming in there on a minimal contract, so he's coming in to probably be a part-time running back, but that's still, under Mike McCarthy, that's going to be a throw the football first offense.
You didn't like the Cowboy draft.
They had a desperate need at running back. When we were here last Thursday, I would have bet my mortgage they would have taken Jonathan Brooks from Texas, because that was a big-time stud running back before he had the knee injury right at the end of the season. And he's rehabbed, and they think he'll be ready for opening day, but they did not take him. Carolina wound up taking him to put in the backfield with Bryce Young. But they've had a lot of injuries in the offensive front. They've lost a couple of 3 players. Tyron Smith is finally gone, and he was their anchor at left tackle, the ex-USC Trojan for a decade. Their center, whom they drafted, is gone. So they've had to fill in some slots there. I trust the Cowboys drafts because they don't fail with their draft picks. But I just said, don't you need to run the football to help Dak? Jonathan Brooks would have been the right guy to run the football to help Dak. Didn't happen.
Why do the Cowboys always seem to choke in the playoffs? Is Dak Prescott really a Super Bowl quarterback, do you think?
He's had a good bounce back 2 years. Prior to that, there was some substandard season or two in there, but it's all predicated on what you're around. If all your wide receivers are hurt, then what do you got? Or if your offensive line's hurt, you might have Dak Prescott, but if they can't protect him, it's not the same. And then obviously Zeke looked like he hit the finish line. He wasn't the power back he was. They had Tony Pollard. Then Tony Pollard leaves as an unsigned, unrestricted free agent. So it's not always on the quarterback, although he's the focal point of the offense. It's what's going on around that quarterback.
Yeah, the Dallas has had a lot of great quarterbacks in the day. Okay, here's a comment from Joey. He says, Hacksaw, you know all about Tom Telesco. You know I'm a Raider fan. Tell me how you think he did.
Yeah, I gave him a letter grade of A. Joe, when we're done with this podcast in a couple of minutes, you go to my website and read my draft report card. It's on my One Man's Opinion column page. Read my draft report card. They had needs. They got players. So I think the Raiders, top to bottom, at least through the first 4 picks, I thought they drafted really, really well, and they filled holes that they had to get filled. I mean, that tight end's pretty good. You get Brock Bowers to go with Devontae Adams and the receiver on the other side, the kid that came from New England. All of a sudden, that's pretty good. Now, you might have a black hole at running back because there's no Josh Jacobs anymore. That's an issue. How are you going to fill that in? So, but they had a lot of needs, and I think that Telesco did a decent job getting it. And he didn't trade the whole volume of draft picks in the future away to try to get Jaden Daniels. The price was way too steep.
Mm. Well, you said that Telesco kind of was a more conservative GM with the Chargers.
Yeah.
Do you think he changed his behavior for this draft with the Raiders?
No, he didn't make a ton of trades. He didn't do a massive trade up. And I don't think he'd ever traded back. And he didn't do that either, at least in the top 4 rounds. So, I mean, I think they helped themselves. They got themselves a really good offensive center. They got themselves a right tackle. They got Brock Bowers, and they got the defensive lineman too. So, good grade. But Raider fan, if you can read, if you have a laptop in jail, just go to my website and read my one man's opinion column today. It's right there posted. I'll tell you who did well and why, and who did not do well and why.
Yeah, Joey had another interesting follow-up comment. He says, if your partner ever wants a day off, I'll be glad to fill in for the day for free. Love the show. Keep it up, guys.
Either that, or if he decides to get rid of this tradition in the anchor's chair, you might be getting a call to come replace me. Go ahead. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Roberto. And he says, Lee, do you like Profar batting leadoff going forward?
A lot of energy, gets walks, sprays the ball, puts it in play, occasional home run. Yeah, at this point, because of veteran, although I thought maybe Jackson Merrill. Jackson's cooled off a little bit, but Jackson Merrill puts the ball in play too. So either one of those two. I just don't think Xander's the leadoff hitter. And, Profar just brings a lot of energy to the plate. And if dude gets on first base, then things happen. So I like it.
Yeah. Well, Xander even admits that he's kind of sucking right now. So yeah, Profar, remember we were debating that, Merrill, Profar, Hassan Kim. Profar has just been terrific. Last year when he was leading off, and he did great yesterday. So hopefully more of that, get some guys on base.
And of course, my opinion is let's enjoy what we're getting from Profar right now, because he is a lifer 246 hitter.
Yeah, he is. But he's just got all that good vibes going on.
Energy.
Makes the team feel good about themselves. Okay, here, let's go to Conrad. And he says, how about the LA Rams draft, Lee? Rams just beefed up their defense and could be serious contenders within the next 3 years.
They bounce back. They found an entire offensive line last year, and they slotted those guys in, and they all played, and they were kind of unique to the exception. They did not lose anybody to catastrophic injury in the offensive front, and usually that happens to everybody. So that group's there and got all that game experience, and you got Stafford they kept upright. That heavy-duty running back is back for his 3rd starting season. They drafted a 3rd down running back to go with him. So I just tend to think that the Rams, because they got the defensive end, then they got the defensive tackle, then they got the running back. And I don't know about the other. They had 11 picks, and I think they drafted 9 guys. I don't know about the other 6 that they drafted, but that's what OTAs and mini camps are. But I gave them a letter grade A. And when we're done, you go read what I wrote about the Rams on my website too.
How do you think the Rams are going to fare in the NFC West? Maybe number 2?
Yeah. I haven't given much thought to that. My brain is so clogged with names off the draft board. I close my eyes and I see names scrolling through.
Well, do you still have your clipboard with all the scribble that you always do every day?
It's right over here.
Yeah, perfect.
And I haven't had a chance to sit down and actually go through pick by pick and slot it into each team. That's the next project on the equation.
I love it. Hacksaw grinding back at home. Okay, let's go here to Hitman. He says, Kawhi Leonard needs to retire. He's hurt too much.
Yeah, he's had a lot of bad run. And the quad injury was the beginning of it. He's had 2 knee surgeries on top of the quad injury. Hate to see it end this way, because what a brilliant career he's been. He might be borderline Hall of Fame. He's such a good player. And we're always talking now about watch Kawhi hit this 3-point shot. Watch Kawhi put it on the floor and explode to the basket. We no longer talk about the size of Kawhi's hands, and look at all the rebounds he takes down, and look at the way he defends. I mean, this is a complete basketball player. And we saw him at San Diego State for an extended period of time. I don't think we ever imagined he would become this complete a basketball player. But he landed in the right place. He went to San Antonio with Popovich, and Popovich is a great teacher, just like what Popovich is doing with Victor Wembanyama, the French teenager. And he just became a hell of a complete player under Popovich. And he went to Toronto, and they won the crown. And then obviously he's moved on since then. So I hate to see it end this way, but there's a lot of miles on that body for sure.
I remember when Kawhi came out from San Diego State after only 2 years in college, and I thought, oh, it's way too early. He's not ready yet. And boy, he sure proved me wrong. I mean, he came out on fire, did great. And 2 MVPs in the final. It's just incredible. I mean, so can you imagine if the Clippers had all their guys healthy at the same time, what they could be?
They could be what we expect them to be in the NBA Western Finals or in the championship series, but they can't get free of injuries. I mean, it's happened again. It happened in the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin era, and now it's happened here with the Kawhi situation, and that's tough. Kawhi became such an offensive force so quickly in the NBA under what Popovich taught him. I never expected to ever see that. I thought he'd be just a phenomenal defensive guy, but that's not sexy. But boy, now he's a player in neon lights because of what he can do offensively.
Yeah, his mid-range and three-pointers were clunky at San Diego State. He's come a long way. Good for him. But I was going to say something, but let's move on. Let's go to the next comment here. This is Eagle Lion again. Lee Hacksaw on the Mount Rushmore of Southern California sports talk radio.
I agree.
Who else is on the Mount Rushmore with you?
Oh, my God. I would have to say Ted Leitner because of all the things he did. He pioneered TV really differently, like I pioneered sports talk radio really differently. Mm-hmm. And obviously everything he's done with the Padres, a little bit of it with San Diego State. So I would say he'd probably be up there. After that, you asked me too quick. I just have to go back and think. I would have to think that probably in terms of sports talk radio guys, I would have to think Steve Hartman, my partner at the original 690, has to be part of that equation. And then you will have a writing campaign to see who'd be the fourth guy. That's an interesting question. We maybe do we have so many topics that we want to talk about when we're putting our list together. We're just going to do one show separately. We're just talk about sports talk radio, then sports talk radio in San Diego now. We'll kind of fill in a show just with doing that rather than talking about the hot headlines.
Imagine it'd be hard to pick 4. I mean, there's Vince Scully, there's Chick Hearn.
Well, I thought he was just talking San Diego.
No, Southern California.
Southern California.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to add Chick Hearn and Vince Scully, then there's only 2 slots left. I thought he was making reference to just San Diego sports talk.
But there's just some amazing talent here in Southern California.
Yeah.
Good for you, Lee, man. What you've done is just
Blame
incredible.
me. Go ahead. It's all on me.
Okay. Let's go to John. He says, hated watching it, but Igor Stretch, I don't know how you say that. Shesterkin completely shut down Alex Ovechkin, TJ Oshie, and Tom Wilson. Igor, I think, will win the Vezina.
Vezina.
What's that?
That's the trophy for the top goaltender in the NHL.
Ah.
Ovechkin, I hate to say 200,000 miles, he did not score a point in the Washington Capitals series when they got swept by the Rangers 4 straight. And this is a legendary Hall of Famer, global hockey star. He did not score a point. Oshie, I feel bad about. He was recipient of a couple of cheap shots. I don't think he ever got to be 100% healthy along the way. Washington, good season. Rangers, nobody on the West Coast pays attention to Ranger hockey. They have so much goal scoring, and that goaltender is really, really good.
It's interesting with hockey here in Southern California. Like, I'm raised in California. Hockey is foreign to me. But so much about the sport, and so many fans here in Southern California really appreciate you for talking hockey, because very few people do talk hockey down here.
We all come from somewhere. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up on Eastern Long Island. I got to see, and I was not a Rangers fan, then I saw the Islanders come as an expansion team with Dennis Potvin and all those great players. I got to see them grow to be a champion. But I had access to Hockey Night in Canada, as a guy who wound up being a broadcaster. I so appreciate what I was exposed to with Hockey Night in Canada. And, the same on everything else. I saw the New York Giants Baltimore Colts championship game as a kid in 1958 in black and white. And they say that's the game that triggered the NFL on TV to become the monstrous success it is right now. And I grew up with the Yankees. Now, these are names that most people would not realize, except if they're in our age demographic. But I grew up with Mel Allen and Phil Rizzuto and Red Barber. I grew up with Vin Scully and Jerry Doggett. I grew up with Les Kiter of the old New York Giants. So I kind of grew up in an environment in which I got access to a lot of things. But I grew up and I fell in love with hockey, and I fell in love with Hockey Night in Canada.
It would be great to be hanging out with you, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, as a kid. By looking at baseball cards and watching stuff on TV. This is great. Let's go here to Dave. He says, what does an NFL team receive as financial compensation to play in England? Obviously, an EPL team would lose a lot. Every match is sold out, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part. And obviously, there's the cut of the TV pie. But the NFL, when it sends its teams to play abroad, they pick up all the expenses. And then because an NFL team would be forfeiting a home game, like Jacksonville's given up 2 home games a year because the franchise wasn't drawing very well. It's in an old stadium, et cetera, et cetera. They also are given a stipend for each amount of gross revenue they don't get in home revenue because they're giving up that home game. So, I mean, the league takes care of them. It's a profit thing for the Jaguars or anybody else who goes abroad. It's hard. It's really hard on your team because you got short work weeks, you got the travel, obviously you got the schedule, and the league has tried to help them by giving them a bye week after they're coming back from Europe. But it's not easy. Like the Eagles, they're going to play in Brazil. We've had teams that have played in Japan, and they're expanding. We're going to play a game in Spain. There's going to be a game in France. And obviously the multiple, was it 4 games now, I think, in London, England that are being played. But those teams are compensated. But boy, the wear and tear factor is amazing. All right, let's do another quick thing, social media here before we put a lid on this.
But before we put a lid on it, all right, let's go down here to social media and let's talk a little Reggie Bush. Boy, so much comments on this one. This is from Antonio, and he says, take. His violations didn't impact his on-field performance. He was the best college football player and should never have had that taken away. Guys like O.J. Simpson and Johnny Manziel can keep their trophies, but not Reggie. Wild that was ever taken away, and everyone knows the sanctions placed on USC were severely unwarranted.
Well, they should have never taken the trophy away because they'd never done that prior to other guys who had gotten in trouble post-football careers. So that's an issue. My beef is that it happened. I've seen the documentation, the credit card bills that were signed. I know about the transfer of the money, $300,000 cash. I do not buy the theory that since in 2024 athletes can be paid, that rule should be flipped all the way back to 2004 because of what Reggie Bush and his family took. The rules were the rules in 2004 that you can't have extra benefits. And that applied to a kid that played at Michigan, or a kid that played at Texas, or a kid that played at Florida State, whatever. And Reggie Bush and his family went against that. He never cooperated, and he never apologized. And they killed USC. Those sanctions were brutal. Outside of the death penalty they gave SMU in the Eric Dickerson, Craig James era, this had to be the second most severe sanction. 30 scholarships. Southern Cal has never recovered. And what bothers me, Reggie never admitted to anything, yet everybody knows he did it. And he never apologized to USC to what happened to the football program. Oregon and Washington did not knock down USC. What Reggie Bush and his family took did. And the Trojans have never recovered from that. I honor him. I honor him as a great, great football player, but I can't honor him as a person. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're wrong. The fans have overwhelmingly come out and saying this is BS, the whole thing, and it's like selective enforcement. So Johnny Manziel, did he have his Heisman Trophy taken away? Did Texas A&M get sanctions? What about Cam Newton? He was at Auburn, right? I mean, what happened in that situation? Why weren't those 2 guys busted?
I don't think they found deep enough dirt on them.
But Reggie Bush is adamant that he's innocent. Well, I mean, how could he be so certain that he is innocent when you say he's totally guilty?
He just would not cooperate, did not want to testify. And yet I've seen signed documents with his name on it, credit card bills, Vegas Airlines. And the family took the money, $300,000 plus a brand new house.
But like, what about the UNLV basketball team? They took the money, right, from the boosters there. This is going on all over college sports, and it's just they protect the SEC teams, they protect the Big 12 teams, but they zing the Pac-12 guys.
Well, SEC teams have gotten nailed. Deion Sanders was at Florida State. They got their ass put on probation. All types of illegal inducements from the boosters. But do you know what FSU stood for in that era? Free Shoes University. Because the players were being given everything, and they got nailed. So, and the SEC teams have gotten nailed.
Yeah.
Kentucky wound up going on probation in basketball. So, but there are also stretches of time. One of the common jokes was the NCAA is so upset at how many violations they found at Kentucky. So upset. They put Eastern Kentucky on 4 years probation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you want to get one more
One
in?
more in here.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Coyotes. And this is from Jervil, and he says, Salt Lake City is far better than Quebec. Let's just look at one thing. The Canadian dollar. Winnipeg is struggling to bring in fans to fill up the smallest arena in the NHL. Keep the Coyotes in the United States and move them to Salt Lake City. If Winnipeg happens to fail, and it honestly looks like they can, move Winnipeg to Quebec for a while, even while until it's time to move out that franchise to Kansas City or Houston. Yeah, I said what I said.
Well, it's a complex issue. Arizona has just been a disaster for the league, and yet the league would not leave Arizona because of the size of the market, but they just never got an arena built, and it's just a massive issue there. Going to Salt Lake City is a limited market. Now, it'll be a novel thing for the first couple of years, but do they keep it up? That remains to be seen. You got to win, and Arizona looks like it's a long ways away from winning. I'm just biased because I happen to think it's the Canadian game, and I think Quebec City would be a phenomenal regional market to compete with Montreal, with Ottawa, and with Toronto. But I've got Canadian ties, so that's why I'm biased towards them. You got Houston, which is massively exploding, and you've got all multiples of arenas in there. Kansas City built a new arena, AEG, out of Los Angeles. Built a great arena in Kansas City that never gotten a sniff for an NHL franchise. Of course, they had a franchise at Kansas City Scouts a long time ago, and it failed, and it wound up moving to New Jersey, I believe. They became the New Jersey Devils. So it's too bad. I don't know where the NHL is going to go. I think expansion is on the horizon, and we'll just have to say, I'm biased. I just think Quebec City deserves a franchise.
Interesting. And Kansas City built an arena, and then we even had an NBA team. So how many, like Major League Baseball has 30 teams. The NFL has 32.
NBA has 30, and hockey's got 30.
30. Okay. So, I mean, how much do you think this could expand? Do you think they could get to 40 teams? It wouldn't go that big.
No. We're not putting a franchise in Fargo, North Dakota, please. I think we'll see 32 or 34. And it's all big money. It's all mega money right now. But to get a franchise, John Riley wants a franchise in his backyard. That's going to cost you $2 billion. Now, price tag is just.
That's just the franchise fee too, right?
Right.
I mean, then you got to put the capital in to fund it. Yeah,
exactly. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed what we brought your way on a Monday. Just a reminder, check my website, fill out, join Hacksaw's Insiders Group, get my NFL draft recap. It's right there in my One Man's Opinion column. And be with us on Thursday. We'll be back here. Our podcast brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Center Stores, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego, and by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. John, take a deep breath, gather your thoughts, get your eyeballs straight again after watching so much football, and we'll be back Thursday to talk playoffs and to talk baseball.
Playoffs? Were you talking about playoffs?
NBA or NHL.
Okay.
Thanks for being with us, and thank you for joining us on Hacksaw's Headlines.